Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying and to a slightly early Thursday video. Normally this would go out at 4 o'clock UK time, but we're going early because we have massive news. Kalle Rovanperä has decided to retire from the WRC at the end of the 2025 season. That is mind-blowing, absolutely huge news. You'll have to excuse me for this video not being super slick edit or anything like that, because I just wanted to get it out quickly because this is huge. This is such a massive story. So, man, where do we even begin? Let me just read you a little bit of his statement. I'm going to do it from my phone. You're going to have to excuse me. So he has said, "Dear Rally community, I am writing to let you know that I've decided to retire from the World Rally Championship. This decision wasn't easy, but I know it's the right one for me to pursue my other dreams in motorsports. I fell in love with rally as a kid and was fortunate to grow up surrounded by legends and idols with the chance to start driving at a very young age. My dream back then was to become a WRC driver, win a rally, and one day become a world champion. I'm very proud to have achieved those goals. This sport has shaped me and my skills in countless ways, and I step away from it with deep gratitude. I want to give a special thank you to my trusted co-driver Jonna, whose relentless work and friendship have been a vital part of our success. To my family, my personal team and partners, thank you for standing by me over the past decade, and we have worked hard together to reach the top. This would not have been possible without your commitment and support. And to my first co-driver, Risto, who guided and taught me when I was just a kid, trusting me to drive flat out through the forests, I will always be grateful. I want to thank every team that has given us the opportunity and everyone who has worked with us along the way, especially everyone at TGR WRT, for your tireless hard work, for believing even when things didn't go as planned, and for sharing the joy when they did. We have achieved great things together, and there is still much to fight for in 2025. I will give my all for the rest of the season to help secure the Manufacturers' Championship and to fight for the driver's title. And most importantly to you, my fans, thank you for your constant support and huge emotions. Seeing and feeling your passion and love has been simply unforgettable. I hope to see as many of you at the last rallies as possible and support us until the very end. More news soon." Whoa. I'm a little bit lost for words, but at the same time not completely surprised. I think since he took his year out last season and came back this year full time, we haven't seen quite the same Kalle Rovanperä as we had seen in the past. You know, I think there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, about whether his year out actually helped him. He's been a little bit off at times. There's been talk that he hasn't got on with the hand-cooked tyres, or maybe the removal of the hybrid system has impacted him a little bit and taken away some of his feeling and comfort with the car. But maybe, as it turns out, maybe he just wasn't completely committed in the same way that he was before. Maybe having won those 2 championships and all those rallies, 17 or so rallies I think it was, maybe the drive just wasn't there anymore. Maybe, you know, even though he's only 25, he felt like he'd achieved everything he wanted. I think he said in a statement made to dirtfish.com that he felt like at this age it was time to do something new. So maybe that is part of the reason why the performances haven't been quite what we've been used to at times, with a few exceptions, of course. He's not been bad this season by any means and remains in the championship fight, but just wowzers. I suppose the other question is what comes next. So it appears that he will be competing in Japanese Super Formula next season as he tries to shift his focus to circuit racing, which I think is very interesting. You know, a few circuit racers have gone into rallying over the years, haven't they? Generally towards the end of their career, it must be said, but it's quite rare to see a rally driver try and make it on the circuit. Kalle's in a very interesting position, isn't he? Because at 25, he's much younger, but potentially not young enough, obviously, to follow the single-seater path to its conclusion. Which is of course Formula One, in case you didn't get the reference. Could he make that jump? I don't know. It's very interesting. He has proven himself a very proficient driver, which is no surprise. He's been good at drifting and does that for fun. So I did half wonder if he'd do Drift Masters or something full time, but it seems that's not the case. He's decided to go down the circuit route. He has been driving a Porsche Carrera Cup a little bit. Will he make it in single-seaters? That is such a big question, isn't it? Such a big question. As I said, he is a little bit older to pursue that route. you know, if you look at Formula One, it's an interesting comparison in a way, isn't it? Because Kalle started when he was very young, first drove a rally car when he was about 8, I think, didn't he? And moved up through the ranks at a very young age. And there's a parallel there with Max Verstappen, isn't there? Who also moved through the single-seater ranks very quickly and got to Formula One at a very young age and actually skipped a few steps along the way. Rovanperä is not in that place. He's now much older, and he is older than a lot of F1 drivers would be when they would reach Formula One. So it's going to be very interesting to see how far he can follow that single-seater path. Super Formula makes sense as a starting point. You know, Toyota are going to be continuing to support him as he goes on this new adventure. He said he is working towards an F2 drive in 2027. So I think that's going to be a really significant step, because I don't think he's going to really make any major inroads into single-seaters unless he goes down the F3 or F2 route. He hasn't stated explicitly that he wants to make it to F1, but has said he wants to compete at the highest level, and has said that F1 is the highest level. So the ultimate goal seems implicit. I mean, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see how far along the single-seater path he can make it. I think the idea of him getting to F1 in his late 20s might be a bit out there in reality. You know, by the time he's done a year in Super Formula and probably a couple of years in F2 if he goes down that route, that's a big ask, isn't it? And he is going to be on the back foot if he makes it to F1 at that point, though it would be a sensational story. I mean, alternatively, he could follow the single-seater path for a few years and then divert into other things. He has talked about Le Mans and obviously has decent experience in Porsches, so maybe he'll divert back to that. Maybe we could see him at Le Mans in future, or in World Endurance, which he'd be very good at. But for me, perhaps seems a little bit anticlimactic, I think, for his career. That said, you know, if he can become a world champion in WEC and having been one in WRC, then, you know, that's not a bad career to have, is it? But, you know, it's fascinating. I think it's an absolutely fascinating situation that a driver has started WRC so young and has reached a point by his mid-20s where he feels he's done everything that he wants to do, and now wants to go off and do other things. You know, he's fortunate to be in that position to be young enough to go off, and he could have a very successful career in circuit racing, couldn't he? So I think it's absolutely fascinating from that perspective. A part of me is a little bit sad, I have to say, that he has decided to leave WRC. Not just because he's such a spectacular driver, but it also shows that his commitment to rallying has wavered. You know, he feels he should go off and do other things, whereas, you know, other drivers feel that WRC is the place that they want to be for their entire career, and that's not a slight or a criticism against Kalle. It's perhaps a criticism of the WRC itself, that it's not given him the love to want to continue it for the next decade. You know, he wants to go off and do other things. So I'm a little bit torn in that respect. But wow, just absolutely wow. What a story. As I said, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens, to see how far he can take the circuit racing journey. But otherwise, I think, like perhaps you guys, I'm a little bit speechless. I assume that some of you probably are. So let me know what you think. Tell me in the comments, what do you think? Are you surprised by this? Are you not surprised? Are you crying? Are you happy? Do you think he's going to become a Formula One world champion in the future? What do you think Kalle is going to do with his circuit racing career? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. As I said, this video is going out a bit early, but it seemed to warrant it with it being such a massive story. As I said, I'm sorry that the editing isn't super amazing. I just wanted to get it out there because it's such a big thing and I wanted to talk about it. So there we go. Don't know what else to say apart from that. See you next time.